Hi everyone, I'm Jen Tripp, Executive Director of the Arlington Chamber of Commerce. One of the Chamber's benefits is networking events, and each month we have a women's networking and breakfast. Barb Davis of Edward Jones presented a woman's guide to money matters. She gave an overview of financial goals and strategies specific to women of all ages. I hope you enjoy it.
This presentation is geared towards a woman's financial plan, a woman's journey, but many of the things that I'm going to speak to are key to everybody that handles money. Male, female, a variety of different ages, but it is simply starting with a plan. Now we look at, one of you mentioned that you're the financial manager in your household. It has evolved over the years where it typically was frequently the woman in the household would be taking care of the house, might take care of the bills, might take care of a lot of the operations expenses, but would defer to a husband, or a father, or a brother, or my uncle does it. As we go through the different generations, women are stepping up and taking more interest and responsibility in their financial plan. Some of it comes from a very difficult standpoint because 90% of women will be single in managing their money at some point in life. It can be in the very beginning when they're young, before they take a partner. It can be that they choose to manage their monies throughout their whole life. In many couples now, the husband or partner manages their monies, and the woman manages their money, and they keep it separate. They contribute to their household, but their financial plans, everything can be separate with common goals, but they don't bring them together. And that's something that I have some clients in their 70s that manage their money like that, but more so it's couples in their 40s, their 30s, and their 20s. But out of all of this, we're seeing trends where women are stepping up, and if they haven't been taught or gone through a class or had somebody that's influenced them, taking the initiative to reach out and learn. And sometimes it's difficult because it happens through divorce or death of a partner. Because again, 90% of us, not half, not 1 out of 2, but 90% of us will be managing our money alone. The other thing that happens to us is that women tend to live 7 years longer than men. And so asking those questions early in the game are really, really important. And the key to retirement is saving now, starting to save young, and then save throughout your life. But a plan is really key to that. When we go to Florida in the wintertime, we don't just get in the car and drive to the airport and hope it all works out. Or drive to Florida and hope it all works out. We have a plan. We sit down and we figure out how much money we're going to spend, where do we want to go, what type of things do we want to experience, what level. Do we want to stay at a 5-star hotel at Disney? Do we want to go to Key West and enjoy that side of Florida? We have a plan. So when you're managing your money, although you said you don't have a financial plan, you own a house, you're investing in a 401k and you're saving, so intrinsically you know that you need to do those things. But how many of you have seen the Prudential commercial where the professor or whatever is saying, how old is the oldest person that you know? And it's amazing to see that there are many, many people that are right around 100 years old. When we plan for insurance now, we plan up to age 120. And if we can have artificial knees, artificial hips, if we can be told what to do by Google on our eyeglasses, by the time we all get to retirement, it's going to be very different. But the two key issues with retirement are we going to outlive our money and inflation? Because in 2009, when everybody got really scared with what was going on in the marketplace and pulled your money out, if you haven't put it back in or done something with it, that money has missed 110% growth in the market. but it's also being eaten alive by inflation. We've been in a fairly low inflationary period right now, unless you're a senior, and you would argue that point if you're a senior. But the Consumer Price Index deals with the cost of living, except for food and fuel. Not that any of us use those. No. So it's kind of an artificial number, but there's a rule called the rule of 72, and you take what your return is and divide it into 72, and that tells you how long it's going to take to double your money. So if you are running with an inflation rate of 3%, divide 3 into 72, and you get just a hair short of 25. What that's telling you is that in 25 years, the cost of living is going to double. If you're a senior that does eat and pay for fuel, it's going to be higher than that. And if you have health care costs or medical costs, your cost of living is also going to go up. So it's pretty scary if you're looking at inflation wins or you outlive your money. So there are different financial strategies for the various stages of life, protecting the money, but women we tend not to take on enough risk. And I think the thing with risk is it's the fear of the unknown. Because the market is a living, breathing thing. Stocks and bonds. Sometimes I feel the stock market is like a 14-year-old on hormones. It has emotion. It reacts. We had a very frightening time in 2008 and 2009. But if you were in bonds, you did very well. It's the first time in 100 years that bonds outperformed stocks, but there was life at the end of the tunnel, but it was knowing how do you deal with that. And sometimes I like to say fear is forgetting everything is all right, or false evidence appearing real. It's that knowledge piece that's so important with how do I set up my plan, what's appropriate for each stage. I love that you want to help your children with that. But also for women taking more interest in 2009. Before that, it used to be frequently one partner in a couple would come in for reviews and talking about the money. I still have men that don't bring their wives in. And it's like, what are they going to do when you maybe drop dead before they do? Not to be harsh, but statistics say that will happen. But after 2009, when women saw a partner who was investing aggressively lose their cookies because the market was falling so fast, it's like, okay, now I want to know what's going on with our retirement. And I think that's really a positive thing. But the thing I value very much about Edward Jones, our motto is making sense of investing. So I love the teaching component that goes with that. But simply, men will generally over-invest in things that they like or that have been tried and true. They will invest more aggressively than women will. They will tend to hear about something. There's a lot of excitement about Twitter right now, which was the same excitement about Facebook, which was the same excitement about Dunkin' Donuts. I had people come in with like, they're only $10,000 and want to invest it all in Dunkin' Donuts when that was going public. Men will tend to hold on to things longer. Like how much loss do you need before you decide to get out? So these are generalities. It's not every individual. Women tend to ask for directions. How many times have we heard that before is a difference between men and women? We tend to get out earlier because we're not comfortable with that risk or the loss or not knowing why. We live longer, we get divorced, men get divorced, but also we tend not to start, we're going to get to it. So that's something that, where do you reach out and find help? It can be through somebody that comes in. 401k providers to employers are required by law to come in and meet with all the participants. If you have a really large company, a lot of participants, you may or may not get help. You may get things that are helpful to you, but who knows you specifically? Who knows what your fears, your plans, your paradigms are. Starting with somebody at work is a good place to start, but somebody said, how do you know a good financial advisor? How do you know that somebody is going to really help you? I see a lot of different statements that come in, and I appreciate the ones where it's very clear that the financial advisor, I mean, we are required by law to serve, and regulations, to serve you as the client and work with plans that are most appropriate for you. There's a lot of regulation out there, but we also have different personalities and different styles. But I think when you're looking at a financial advisor, somebody to help you get started, it is like dating, it is a relationship. You don't want to go on forever, but the first time you meet with an advisor, you'd want to know that they've listened to you, that this is a person that you're comfortable with, that they're not speaking over your head in technical jargon, because we have as many acronyms in our business as all of you put together in your businesses. Mm-hmm. It can be technical, it can be complicated, and you just want to feel comfortable with that person, and that the more information you share with an advisor, the better they're able to help you. So sometimes when I sit with people, it takes them a long time to finally tell me, I have credit card debt. And it's like, that's okay. It's kind of like, I'm like a doctor. Just tell me what the symptoms are, and I can help you with it. There is no shame or embarrassment in being where you are. That's simply where you are. It's strategies to move from that place to a better place that you want to be in, like getting rid of the credit card debt, or what's your monthly budget. Very high income people cannot know where their money's going, and they know that they're okay at the end of the month. They just don't know that they're not comfortable knowing that they're working to that goal at the end of the road. What is my retirement? And so we'll sit down and look at budgets and tracking where money is. Credit card debt is easy to incur in the Boston metropolitan area, but also student loans are an increasing factor in people's financial planning as well. And if you've got $70,000 worth of debt because you had to pay that to get your education and start your profession, that certainly has an impact on your ability to plan for retirement. So when we look at where do we go, it's starting with a roadmap and to understand what is your current financial situation. Sometimes it's as simple as run for a week on all cash and see how long your cash lasts. Or it can be saving receipts. Or if you're doing your tracking on Facebook, I'm sorry, not Facebook, on QuickBooks. There's too many books out there. Tracking what your expenses are. It's just like prioritizing anything else. If you put rocks, gravel, and sand in a bottle, if your big priorities are the rocks, and medium priorities or B priorities are gravel, and sand are the C priorities, if you don't take care of the rocks first and put them in a jar, if you take care of those last, they're not going to get in there. So that might be a little bit obtuse, but you have to know what your big goals are and take care of those first. So for many of us, it's the rent, it's the mortgage, it's the cost of living with food, with heat, car, or whatever. And then it's starting to look at, a number of you have mentioned retirement, a number of you have mentioned children and college. So what are we doing as far as working towards those? And then the other pieces are, what else do we do with our money? And in 25 words or less, you will now complete the class of how to have a money smart child. They're watching you. So how you spend your money is going to be how your kids spend their money. So if you're planning and sitting down with talking about the people in your household, about how your money works, what you need, different cycles of money, particularly if you're in a sales career or building a new business. If you're talking about that and how you're handling it, your children will learn from that. The second thing is, once you understand what your current financial situation is, simply if you have money left over at the end of the month or not, determining your values. What does money give you? It can give us freedom. It can give us security, independence, longer-term goals like watching our children graduate from college, being able to provide a wedding or a special ceremony for our children, but also to celebrate a 50th or 60th wedding anniversary for our parents. Each one of us as individuals has life goals and life values. Some people will say to me, you know, I just don't have that much money. And when my kids go to college, they're going to have to figure it out for themselves. And my response is, I'm thinking, can you help them figure it out for themselves? But it's very realistic that not everybody has money for higher education. And, you know, the cookie cutter response is save for retirement first, and then your children's education second. That's a cookie cutter without any consideration for each one of you as individuals and each one of you with your value system for your children versus retirement or whatever. So what are your values? And then starting to put, once we know what our values are, specific goals. So we mentioned, several of you have mentioned college for your kids. What is college going to cost in 5 or 10 or 15 years? There are calculators. I have very sophisticated tools. I can tell you in 2021 what it's going to cost to go to UMass. I can tell you what it's going to cost to go to Princeton. Some are very focused on, I want my kids to go to an Ivy League school, or Middlesex Community College is a great school, $5,000 versus $60,000 a year. There's a lot of variety out there, but knowing what you think is important for your family is we can look at what those numbers would be. So starting with a goal is, okay, I want to be able to provide for my 2 children to go to college, and I personally will fund 2 years at a state school. That's an example of a goal where value is I want to help my children go to college. Because of that inflation factor and the rule of 72, what it costs to go to college is growing at a greater rate than inflation. It's about 6%. So be kind to the grandparents because they may help you out. Simply looking at what type of education and how much do you want to provide for is really important, but starting early and using tools like tax-free investing. 529 funds allow your money to grow tax-free. You put in your principal, the appreciation, the dividends or interest on that grows tax-free. So it compounds at a higher rate. The tax-free yield is higher than a taxable account. And you can make some very good returns on 529 investments, which are all invested in mutual funds. So start early. Be friendly to anybody that wants to give you money. At a birthday party, train them early. But if you haven't started by the time your children are 5, you're behind the 8 ball on college monies, because it is incredibly expensive. But there are scholarships, there are ROTC programs, there's all sorts of ways kids can get great education. It might not be down the road from mom and dad or at your school. So those are some things we'll talk about, but the tax-free investing is significant in that you can increase your yield. And that's why 401ks are so important, because a 401k is a tax treatment, and it defers the tax on your money until you retire. So one of the things when we look at how do you achieve your goals is, do we do it with taxable money, or how do we position your money so it's taxed later in life or it grows tax-free? The last thing about goals is that you want them to be SMART goals, which means S is for specific, M is for measurable, A is for achievable, R is for relevant, and T is a time frame. Some of the common investing goals is, as we look at retirement, The kids will be living on their own. Your house might be paid for. You're coming off a couple of years of high income. The more realistic factors are you've gotten used to a lifestyle at a certain annual income. Who wants to cut 50% of their income in retirement and live half the lifestyle that you are now? Even though the kids may be gone, some of them are boomerang and will come back. You may replace the expense of children in college with medical costs, which we don't have as much control over, or travel expenses. Because if I asked, what do you all want to do in retirement, I bet the majority of you would say one of your goals is I want to travel. I want to see what's out there and what's happened. When you plan to retire is important. Do not take your Social Security money at age 62 because you can. Social Security is a key factor. It will change over time. In about 2035, it's going to change significantly for those of us that are younger and drawing on it later in life. But if there's anything that you remember walking out of here today, at 62 you get 70% of your Social Security benefit. At your full retirement age, for most of us in this room, it's probably 66 or 67 now, you'll get 100% of your benefit. If you can fund your lifestyle until age 70, you get 130% of your benefit. So don't take it at 62, but what's really tough with people being laid off and unable to get jobs, they've tapped into Social Security at age 62. Because you have to have some money coming in, and the frustration with that is, generally speaking, once you start it, that's where you are. If you start at 62, you can't say at 67, can I have my full benefit now? You can't do that. It doesn't work that way. So it is important, even if you go in and you talk to your banker, or you talk to somebody that's trained in financial planning, Social Security is a big deal. But when you plan to retire, many of us as boomers, and certainly the younger generation, will be working until 70 or into our early 70s. It may not be doing the corporate job, getting up and being at work by 9 and leaving at 5. What tends to happen more in the 60s, or when people are closer to retirement, it may be doing something that you really love doing, but you're still bringing in income. We're not sitting home worried about what's happening out, you know, like with the bridge game and where are we going to visit or whatever. We're still working to bring in some kind of income. And personally, I think that can be a really good thing because it keeps us young, it keeps us connected, socialized, and we're learning new things. But how much will you spend in retirement? Your 401k is a great option. I just want to simply say that if your company offers a match, always take advantage of free money. Whatever you can put in, if it's matched, take advantage of that. The second thing is with 401k plans, there's a third-party administrator that provides those choices for your employer. It is not the whole market. So there will be good choices. There will be choices that may not be good for you. They may be good for other employees. But it's just like group health insurance. It's for everybody that's employed there. The 401k plans, it's very helpful to know what the specific choices are and what's meaningful to you. What I do as an advisor is I'll look at people's 401k plans, I'll look at what they have outside, we'll look at the whole story, and sometimes there might be a really good fund in a 401k plan and the employee has put a lot of money into that. We'll look at their outside investments and try to balance the total portfolio. Regardless of where it's located, you want a balanced portfolio. But unless you want to spend a lot of time on a Saturday afternoon doing that for yourself, you may not get there on your own. The other thing to be very aware of with 401k plans is because there is an administrator and a process with your employer on them, there are fees with them that are not blinking in red lights. And that's part of the regulatory environment. It's part of the administration and the ability of your employer to be able to offer that to you. So when you leave your employer, just know that if you're leaving 401ks behind, somebody else is managing your money for you and it's costing you more. And we like to say if you left your employer and you left a coat on the back of the door, what would you do? Obviously, very nice. So why do you leave your money for somebody else to manage and cost you more? 401k rollovers, a 401k, a 403b are IRS regulations, and it specifically defines the tax status. It's tax deferred. What you do is take your 401k, and it's like a bucket of deferred taxable monies, and you roll it over or dump it into another bucket called a traditional IRA, where you have access to every investment in the market. You have the ability to control the costs, and you have the ability to manage that moving forward. And the one thing that I hear that a lot of people are confused are there are different tax buckets, like tax-free, taxable, or tax-deferred. What's inside of those buckets can be the same thing. Like you can have AT&T in an account that's tax-free, which might be a Roth IRA. You can have it in a tax-deferred, which might be a traditional IRA. Or you could have AT&T stock in a taxable account. And if you just walk away from this remembering there are different tax treatments that can serve you, you can't buy more of your IRA, but you can buy more of something to put in your IRA. So there's products and investment strategies, and there's tax treatments, and that's part of what we look at in your plan. Somebody mentioned annuities, which is a strategy to defer taxes on taxable money, but it's also ensuring that you have income later in life. If you're 35 or 45, you're not worried about an annuity right now, but at 55 or 60, you might be very interested in an annuity because it's like buying a pension. And they have a lot of moving parts, so they're fairly complicated, but it can be the next best thing. And people will say, there's a joke, Susie Orman told me you were going to try to sell me an annuity. Does Susie Orman know you? Do you have a relationship with Susie Orman? It's a very broad statement, and the thing with annuities is some of them have very high costs or the different strategies. You want a financial advisor that will sit down and explain it to you in terms that you understand and are comfortable with for as long as you need to ask the questions. The last two things that I want to mention that are extremely important are preparing for the unexpected. Some of you, or many of you, may have life insurance through your employer, but if you're changing jobs, that life insurance does not go with you. One of the things I feel very passionately about is that everybody needs life insurance because we do not know what is going to happen to us. We all think that life insurance will be needed in our 70s, our 80s, or our 90s. I have a 47-year-old client, 44-year-old wife, a 12-year-old, and a 14-year-old. He was just diagnosed with a terminal illness, and he probably won't be here in 5 years. And he would not discuss life insurance or long-term care with me. And that's so hard because we just do not know what's around the corner. And life insurance has many different facets to it. There's permanent insurance with cash value. Because of the aging of baby boomers, life insurance, there are hybrid products now where you can have life insurance with a long-term care rider on it. You can buy long-term care as a simple insurance policy. I have it, and I'm very glad because as the mother of 3 boys, when they were 13, and 15, I knew they weren't going to be the ones that I wanted to turn to. And I wanted to give girlfriends or family members funds to help take care of me down the road. I would imagine, Joanne, after you took care of your parents, that your thoughts about long-term care may have changed after watching your parents go through decline. And many of us do have that concern after seeing what it's like to take care of our parents. Doesn't mean you have to buy it, but go find out about it. And the same with life insurance. I work with a number of folks that might be in their 30s or 40s, have young kids. Term insurance is very, very cheap, but if you can give your family $500,000 for less than $1,000 a year, you sleep better at night and you know that they're going to be provided for. The last thing is, it's financial, but it's more legal and taking care of our families. And that is, do you have a will? And if you have a will, make sure that you still like the people that you've designated to receive the money. I mean, with divorce, we've all heard the story about the ex-wife got the money and the current wife was like, oh, sorry. But you want to make sure that the person that is your, now it's called a personal representative, used to be called an executor, is financially savvy. If you don't feel that way about family members or close friends, you can have attorneys be a personal representative. Many banks have trust departments. There's always a way to get to that goal, but if you do not have a will, even a simple will, you're no longer stating what will happen to your family and your children. If you're married, the other person will take responsibility, but as we get older, we don't know what's going to happen. And if you have larger estates over $1 million, you definitely need to look at some estate planning to ensure that the money goes where you want it to, not to estate taxes, which are very, very high. But have a will, have it updated. Check the beneficiaries on your 401ks, check the beneficiaries on your traditional IRAs, your Roth IRAs, and if you have a taxable account, like a joint account, but more so if you're single and you have a taxable account, whether it's at your bank or with a financial institution, make sure that you have a transfer on death or a payable on death, TOD or a POD on that. Because what it does is once your death certificate is presented, not that any of us want to think about that right now, but when it's presented, the assets in those accounts can be distributed fairly quickly. If it goes through probate, you're easily looking at 6 to 9 to 15 years before that money is distributed. So those are ways to protect it, and your bank can do that for you, your financial advisors can do that for you. But it's building towards your goals, having a plan in place, working with somebody that you feel you can trust, that will treat you with respect. It is focused on what do you need versus what do they want your money to do. It's your money. And then preparing for the unexpected, because you don't know who's still texting out there while they're driving. You don't know what's around the corner when you go to the doctor's office. And in the meantime, have fun.